Hello, everybody, and welcome to the DATAcated Show. My name is Kate Strachny. I'll be your host for today, and I'm the founder of DATAcated. Now, today we have a special guest, Cindi Howson. She is the Chief Data Strategy Officer at ThoughtSpot, and we're going to talk to you about the 3 ways to ensure that AI improves humanity, improves humanity versus ruins it. We want to make sure AI is used for good. Now, before I bring Cindi up on stage, I want to tell you a little bit about my history with Cindi. So we first had our live show, first time ever, was during the pandemic. It was June 2020. That's me on the top left and Cindi on the bottom right there. We had Todd from Snowflake, Dean from Alteryx, and Alyssa Fink as well from Tableau. Cindi also spoke at one of our DATAcated conferences, July 2021, and I saw that she has that DATAcated sticker, which honestly, I'm just like, anytime I see this, I'm like, oh my God. And she's wearing the DATAcated shirt, so I love that. She's very, very supportive. This is us at ThoughtSpot Beyond in May 2022 in Las Vegas. What a great trip that was. This is September 2022 at Snowflake Data Cloud World Tour in New York City. And March 2023, this was at the New York Stock Exchange. That's us with ColorWise. And Big Data London, can't forget about that, September 2023. And the last time I saw Cindi was at Gartner, March 2024, when ThoughtSpot won one of the DATAcated Booth Awards for being the most enthusiastic team. You could see how enthusiastic Cindi is. We have video footage that will be released hopefully this or next week. Now, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring Cindi up on our stage here. Cindi? Oh, look, we match. Oh, my God.
I know. We could either do Data Divas or now going through that history, I was like, we could have done Jersey Girls too, but you know.
That's true. I wasn't a Jersey girl before though, but I am now.
You are now, yes. We still have to do our hike, and I have to show you the good side of New Jersey.
And your little doggy, your tiny little doggy.
Oh, right? Yeah, my 120-pound puffball.
I can't wait to do that. So thank you for just being you throughout the years and being there. I think you're one of the most supporting people in the data community, period. Like, I'll just leave it there. No one has anything bad to say about you ever. They're always like, oh my God, Cindi, I love her. We go way back. Oh my God. Like, it's always the greatest things. And I don't think that comes easy, but it's a huge testament to who you are as a person. Now, for those who maybe don't know you, and I think we can diva ourselves for this. Why don't you tell the audience a bit about yourself and your role at ThoughtSpot?
Yeah. So first off, thank you for that compliment, Kate, and that history. Wow. Yeah. When I go back to June 2020, what a world we live in. And I do remember reaching out to you. I felt like, how could the community come together and support people that were impacted at that time by our world just being upended? And you gave back to the community by hosting that LinkedIn Live. So I was very grateful for that and super glad that our connections have continued. So I have been in the space for now more than over 30 years. I just got back from England, so was reminiscing about my first Oracle DBA class in beautiful Slough, UK, while I was working for Dow Chemical in Switzerland. But my role at ThoughtSpot as Chief Data Strategy Officer is to do thought leadership events like this. I also host the Data Chief podcast, now award-winning, top 2% of all podcasts out there. Just thrilled to have so many great voices on that show. And I work with our top customers around the world, making sure that they can unlock the value of data using AI-powered insights and natural language processing. So just a privilege to serve the industry for a long time now in different roles.
Amazing. Wow. This is the first I hear about the top 2%. So huge congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. It takes a team, it takes a village, of course, to bring these voices to life. So I'm super grateful for the people behind the scenes that make it happen, and for the heads of data and heads of AI that willingly share their stories, their highs and their lows. That's what it's all about.
Yes, absolutely. We wouldn't have a good podcast without great speakers, just like you being on the DATAcated Show, right? We need good speakers to be successful. So we're here to talk about the role of AI and whether it can make humanity really, really good or it can ruin everything, which unfortunately it does have the power to do both, right? In the
Does.
wrong hands,
Yeah.
it's a very powerful tool. So I wanted to hear, I don't know, are you generally an optimist, a pessimist, a realist? What are your thoughts on how AI is actually going to impact the world?
Yeah. Well, in general, in life, I am more of an optimist than a pessimist. And I am cautiously optimistic about AI improving humanity, but we do have some dangers. And if people are not realistic about this, then I think it will do more harm than good.
Yeah, I I agree, and I think the regulations that are slowly trickling down, like the AI EU Act, I know the US has stuff coming out, but they usually say like, oh, in the next 3-4 years, this will be implemented. A lot can go wrong between now and 3-4 years.
Oh, absolutely. Things can go wrong this week, last week, even. So, to me, this is where you cannot wait for regulation. Regulation is the moral minimum,
Yeah.
and organizations have to be proactive about AI ethics and transparency by design from the beginning. Now, I know it's also a race to really win in AI, deploy AI, have that first mover advantage. That is important too. But ethics by design is not something that you can treat as an afterthought.
Of course, of course. If every company had the good of humanity on their mind as they're building, which unfortunately sometimes contradicts the race and speed and trying to get there early. So I think it's a balance, right? They want to win, but they just have to do it very cautiously. And I think the regulators just sort of sit there in the back of their minds, kind of like, we're going to have to comply eventually. So why not start now?
Yeah, why not start now? I mean, first off, I think the people in charge of the regulation, they don't really have a deep understanding of how these AI models work. And let's be more precise. I think we have to talk about generative AI within the context. Some people use the term AI to really refer to rules-based machine learning.
Hmm.
That's important too. That's also regulated. But generative AI is what is moving so quickly. And this, I think, can unlock human potential, improve healthcare at a time when we really don't have enough healthcare providers and we have an aging population.
Yeah.
So there's huge potential benefits here, but there also are the harms where I say it can become bias at scale
Yeah.
if we're not paying attention to the biases in the training data is where it all starts.
Yeah, I know. It's like if you can make a mistake, but you can make a much bigger mistake much faster on a much larger
Yes.
scale, unfortunately. You can also help much faster. So it is two sides of that coin. Do you think that businesses across industries are using Gen AI or implementing Gen AI effectively right now?
Right now,
Right
that
now.
well, so you and I both came back from Gartner, and so
Yes.
you see, it is a story of extremes.
Yeah.
And I think about the customers already going back to January 2023, where they're like, Cindy, we need to do an executive roundtable. I need to educate my leadership about the art of the possible. And we're doing co innovation workshops, we're doing ideation and imagination sessions. And that's really what is required. You have to start at the leadership level. Otherwise, a leader will read a headline and they're going to have a reaction, either shut it down, wait and see, because AI hallucinates, which, by the way, I think is a terrible word that the media has latched onto. So we have to do some re-education there. So they're either going to take a wait and see approach at the risk to their business as well as the risk to humanity, or they're some have moved fast, and that's the ones that I'm super excited about, the ones that are moving fast. But I can even go same industry. One financial services organization had to strike the word AI from every line item in their contract. And another is, well, you heard some speak at Gartner last week. They're really having a first mover advantage, which I think is
Mhm.
very good.
All right, first question to follow up from everything you just said. What should we call it? If it's not hallucinating, what does it do, Cindy?
Well, so hallucinating sounds like something scary, like psychedelic drugs, right? But a hallucination is really just the predictive analytics gone wrong. And
Yeah.
there are ways that we can improve or mitigate the hallucinations. So Jeffrey Hinkle had the word confabulation, which I know that's not nearly as sexy a headline as hallucination. I mean, we could call it a brain blip, call it an AI blip. It's like when you misspeak, the neurons in your brain just went in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And so an AI blip or an error in the prediction sounds much less scary than a hallucination.
AI is tripping. That's what I'll call it.
Well, now you've overdosed. We've gone from hallucinations to overdosed. Kate, what are we doing here?
Okay, fine. An error in prediction. That's not exciting. Come on.
I know. So, well, we could talk about R squared and what's a reasonable error here, but that's even more boring. But we need to make it less scary. It's the
that's true.
hallucination is not a wild thing. It's really, how did you train the data? Did you bring in reinforcement learning? It's not a scary thing.
Do you think tools like ChatGPT, for example, do you think should they have been made to sound a bit less confident? Because that's sort of the trend I'm hearing for people is they're like, it's usually wrong, but even when it's wrong, it's overly confident in its answer. And it's like, yeah, this is the truth. And then,
well, I wouldn't say that it needs to be made to sound less confident.
okay.
To me, this is again really about AI literacy, what's actually happening. And so you can even say, let's talk about general AI, general machine learning. If I'm predicting a storm, whether it's 8 inches of rain over the weekend in New Jersey or a snowstorm, what is my degree of confidence that we will have the 8 inches of rain? And so with ChatGPT, we could the builders, could OpenAI have added a degree of accuracy, of confidence in the text that would be very useful? Would a layperson really understand that? Lay people don't even understand the degree of accuracy with, is a storm hitting you?
Yeah.
So I think this is where we need more AI literacy.
Yeah, so I guess for the past 5 years, I've been hearing about data literacy, and now you're mentioning AI literacy. How would you define the differences between those two?
They go hand in hand, but I do think as businesses and really as a world, we need to go from focusing on data literacy to AI literacy. So data literacy is really having a common language of business definitions. And I'll use sports because everyone can relate to that. And let's take, in the UK, some people will call soccer football.
Yeah.
This is data literacy. What is the offside rule in soccer? I can use the exact same term in the NFL or American football, offside. And what's an offside? It's when the lineman snapped the ball too early or jumped or moved or whatever, and there was an offside, or maybe the defense jumped. Same word, two totally different meanings.
Yeah.
And so data literacy starts with a common language of what are these business terms. And it goes further than to say, where is the data created? Where does it come from? How has the definition changed over time? There was a really excellent article in the Wall Street Journal recently around infant mortality. And do we have a problem? We actually don't have a problem, or the problem has not gotten worse. It's just the way we collected data has gotten different. So that's data literacy. AI literacy then is an evolution of that. how am I using the data to actually predict things or create output from something like GPT? What is the degree of accuracy?
And do you think the sort of rise of excitement around generative AI, is that going to help drive the, I guess, top-down approach of increasing data literacy and AI literacy in organizations? Because now everyone wants to use Gen AI. Most companies are building at least something where they're like, oh, we're all using AI now or Gen AI. And they first need to make sure that their people understand the data that's being fed and the output. So do you think there'll be a drive around the training and development of staff?
Yes. And I think not even just of staff, but even as students, because of course it's placing a burden on schools at all levels. Do they allow the use of ChatGPT or any other large language model? Let's talk about Google Gemini as well. Do they allow the use of it in classrooms? And it goes back to when even calculators first became enabled. And how much can you trust them? So, two examples, public examples of organizations that I think have leaned in early to data literacy and now evolving to AI literacy. Travelers Insurance Company, for example, they started a data literacy program that they first put all their senior executives through. And so this allows them also to evolve more quickly to AI literacy. Or let's go over to Europe. Nat West has spoken at an event that we were both at Harvard, and they talked about leveraging Data Camp, for example, for all their employees to take generative AI classes. And so some bankers now are pivoting their careers from being frontline bankers to actually evolving to data scientists. So
Oh,
I think this is the reskilling of the workforce.
yeah, I love that. And I think we are going to keep reskilling. And then next year, it's going to be a new skill that we didn't even know about today.
Oh, absolutely. Even the International Monetary Fund recently published a statistic saying that 60% of all jobs will require reskilling and shifts because of generative AI.
I,
I,
I can see that.
lifelong learning is now probably the number one skill.
Wow, very interesting. Now, going back to, you mentioned some schools don't want their students to use generative AI, and for good reason, right? We want people to think and use their brains. But at some point, we had that with calculators where it's like, okay, no, you need to do math by hand, and then you could fact check it with a calculator. And now we're sort of moving away from that, or even like writing in script. My kids don't write in script anymore. They're like, we're typing on our Chromebooks that we all have in school. I'm like, wow, this is very different from when I was a kid.
Yes.
Um, do you think that the companies who are sort of fear driven or maybe more cautious and afraid of the hallucinations or errors that could happen, do you think that they're going to be lagging in this space because they're being overly cautious with the use of Gen AI?
Yes, absolutely. And Kate, you used a very important word here, thinking. We want students and we want people thinking.
Yeah.
And so what I do think generative AI helps unleash is a lot of the stupid rote memorization that takes up a lot of our brain space.
Yeah.
Now, we have to think about what's the long-term consequences of that. You know, as a kid, I could tell you every one of my friends' telephone numbers.
Yeah.
Now I can't. What's happening with that brain? I can barely tell you my children's phone numbers. So, what's happening with that brain space? Can we shift it from rote memorization to more critical thinking and higher level problem skills if it's not, that brain space isn't being used by rote memorization? And so what's interesting is generative AI is not good at the critical thinking. So
Yeah.
it can pass the bar exam, but it can't interpret in English literature.
Hmm.
So I think this shift, it's going to free up a lot of the drudgery and the rote memorization. So for businesses that understand these opportunities, they're going to have the first mover advantage as long as they factor in AI ethics If they are not factoring that in, then there's a huge risk. And I love a quote from Alfredo Colas, the head of data and AI at Procter & Gamble, recently on the Data Chief podcast, is that you should never entrust AI or ask it a question for something that you cannot verify yourself or that you don't already know the answer to. Because again, it's just predictive analytics, really. And so if you're not designing for that, you don't want it to be used for something that's the wild, wild west. Like, should I have this cancer treatment or should I not? That's a little too dangerous. Can I ask it, what are the side effects of this cancer drug? I absolutely can and should.
Well, you know what's interesting? You used an interesting word, verify. And what that triggered is sometimes you'll use maybe ChatGPT for some quick brainstorming or ideas. And then let's say you want to fact check something and verify. So you maybe Google it, right? Because that used to be the norm where you Google to fact check something. But now there's so much AI generated content that sometimes you're verifying ChatGPT content with ChatGPT created content. So where do we actually, where do we go? I don't know.
Well, this is where I really like some of the regulation, but for sure, again, by design. Let's go by design. So
Yes.
an open source large language model in France, Mistral, which Microsoft or one of the vendors just took a stake in as well. I think it was Microsoft last week, which kind of surprised me, but so they're hedging their bets here. But I like that Mistral is open source, because then you know what it's been trained on. And so you know the potential data gaps, the potential biases in the training data. You can compensate with synthetic data, which I think is a really good mitigation strategy. But this is where having explainable AI and the regulation that is requiring that is good. Also tagging the AI generated content, which is also part of different regulations. And again, some are being proactive here. Meta is adding tagging of AI generated content into some of its social platforms, not all of them, but I think it's a good first step.
I have seen, I think it was on TikTok where I have started to see like this was AI generated, but it was, I think it might have been wrong because it was just like a video of a human just walking around and then it was tagged with AI generated. I'm like, which part of this was AI generated? Just a simple video. So it might not be 100% just yet.
Yeah. Did it tag it incorrectly? Was it
I
guessing
think
AI
it tagged it
generated?
incorrectly. There was a comment here I wanted to bring up from Farid. He's saying, agree, Cindi. Human in the loop is always going to persist as validators, verifiers, even though Gen AI does the bulk of the work. What do you think?
Totally. Human in the loop, best practice, need to have it. It should never be AI on its own.
Yeah.
That's when I think it becomes dangerous. But that's where the human in the loop, and when is this a riskier question, a less trusted answer?
Yeah.
And so I like this quote. I think it was Tom Davenport. I have to give him a shout out. I think it was Tom Davenport who said, radiologists, AI will not kill a radiologist's job, but it will kill the jobs of radiologists who don't use AI in addition.
Yeah, and we can make this even more generic for most jobs, right? AI is not taking your job, but the person who knows how to use AI is taking your job. I forgot whose quote that was. It was a tweet that came out that went viral probably a year ago when Gen AI was really picking up and everyone's like, oh no, it's going to take my job, even for content creators and writers. Like, it's not going to take your job, but you still have to learn how to use this new tool.
Yeah.
Just like in any industry, when there's an updated tool, you have to learn how to use it and join that advantage.
Yeah, it'll make it better, especially for the data analysts. I'm excited. I think a lot of the drudgery that data analysts have been putting up with. One data scientist said to me, Cindi, I went to school to have an impact on the business, and I feel like I've become a dashboard monkey. And that is so sad because, of course, I've been saying we need more data experts in the field, but we want to move those data analysts to be able to do higher value work things that free up the time, let Gen AI take the drudgery out, and have the data analysts work on the harder things, like maybe bringing in new data sources that we're never getting to, or optimizing the prescriptive analytics. What's the action I should really take based on these AI insights?
Yeah. And, speaking of data analysts, I wanted to talk about ThoughtSpot for a minute, because I feel like before even ChatGPT came out, ThoughtSpot was already providing a capability for people to talk to their data.
Yes.
So talk to us about that. You were ahead of the curve.
Yes, ThoughtSpot definitely was ahead of the curve. And I go back to 2014 when I had my own business, BI Scorecard, and I got a pitch email. Will you take a briefing from this startup, ThoughtSpot? And I'm like, no, I'm too busy. I have no bandwidth. And they said, yes, but we're using search and AI. And I had been watching search as a possibility to democratize insights going back to 2007. And it took a while for the technology to mature, but ThoughtSpot pioneered and patented the category. Gartner, when I was at Gartner, we came up with the term augmented analytics, but it's really combining natural language processing and AI generated insights to help you get to the patterns in your data for everyone to be able to do that. So I say that generative AI has really educated the world on the value proposition, the way that we should be working with data. And it's enabled ThoughtSpot, who already had natural language processing starting in 2014. It's made the generative AI and the natural language processing even more natural and more infused throughout the whole workflow.
Yeah, and I think when we were talking about AI literacy and data literacy, having a tool that you can actually just talk to really bridges that gap from the technical user to the non-technical user, where you don't have to know exactly how the data is structured or where it's flowing from. You could just say, are we selling more today than we were yesterday? And sort of have the system give you numbers, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I liken this to, we sometimes like to use the term, we're experiencing a data renaissance. And I think where the analogy works, you think about how the printing press enabled people to read. Before that, it was really just the elite, and particularly in the religious orders, that had access to books. So with ThoughtSpot Sage and generative AI, we say this lets any person, a business user, a data analyst, ask questions of their data, or even you don't have to ask a question, just tell me what are the outliers in this data set? Why should I investigate it? And it's really more a conversation.
And I think we've come such a long way. Like, let's say 20 years ago, how we did data analytics to today. It's night and day. It's sort of crazy. And I think we're moving very, very fast into an even more different world where we're just going to be told. We don't even have to ask questions, right? We'll just be told, like, look at this metric because it's not where we think it should be. And it might be smarter than the tech people on the team.
Oh, yeah. I often say, so ThoughtSpot has a mission of creating a fact-driven world. And I will take it a step further and say a fact-driven world is a better world, a more equitable world. Pick your data set. I have a passion for football. We had the debate in the fall around turf. Is our players safer playing on turf or grass? Who had the data? Oh my gosh. And data was used to lie. Or even last weekend, it was pay equity day or the pay gap. And two economists wrote a terrible article with so much confirmation bias saying that the pay gap is a myth. Let's just call it what it is. And they didn't bring data, the cherry pick data. The UK is much more transparent around the pay gap data. So if we have better access to this data, I think we can create a better world, a more equitable world.
I 100% agree with you. Just taking one last comment here from Scott. He's at EDW with Sunny watching the show. I love that.
Say hi to everyone at Enterprise Data World. Doris, I know, yeah, Doug Laney is speaking there too, and Sunny and Scott. So
Shout out to everybody. Woo, I
yeah.
love So, Cindi, I want to thank you so much for coming onto the DATAcated Show. The last question I always ask is, where can people go to follow, to learn more? Where can they find your podcast? Tell us where to go.
Yeah, so follow me on LinkedIn. That's where I am most active. Follow the ThoughtSpot LinkedIn page as well, or the website. We have a free trial of the product there. Subscribe to the Data Chief podcast from your favorite podcast player. It's across all the major platforms.
Great. Let's bring it up to the top 1% in the next month.
That would be great. And I guess in person, I try to get out and about as much as I can. I think I'm seeing you at a New York event at Data Universe in a few weeks.
I know. I'm super excited for Data Universe. I'm going to be on a couple of panels, and I know you have a talk there, right?
Yes, Mike Ferguson, mutual friend, longtime industry collaborator, as he brings the concept of Big Data London to the Big Apple.
I know. It's so excited. I had Mike Ferguson on the show a couple of weeks ago, and we chatted about sort of the plan there and how we're finally bringing something to our neighborhood. So I'm really happy.
Yeah, I am too. Look forward to it.
Awesome. Well, Cindi, thank you so much again for being on the DATAcated Show, and we'll see everybody online.
Thank you for having me, Kate.